I'm David Lawrence, and this is November the 8th, 2004. We're at the Atlanta History Center in Atlanta, Georgia, part of the Library of Congress project to record the histories of the World War II veterans. And today we're honored to have with us one of Atlanta's fine citizens, Mr. Alvin H. Sonny Brown. He was on the Boise cruiser during World War II and has got quite an experience to tell about his times during the war in both the Mediterranean and the Pacific. And he's going to tell us what it was like to grow up in Atlanta, where he grew up, what it was like to be a child of the Depression, and we're just going to turn him loose. Sonny, we're delighted to have you with us today and appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us and appreciate what you did for people like me so that I could go to E. Rivers and grammar school and grow up in Atlanta when you were defending the country for me. Tell us what it was like growing up here in Atlanta in the Depression.
Well, I was born on Crooked Road, but now it's DeForest Ferry. And time's pretty good then, but later on Depression hit and I had to start caddying and take a paper route too to Bobby Jones Golf Course and down Collier Road. Now where Piedmont Hospital is, I had apartments there that I carried newspapers to all the way from Howell Mill Road all the way over to Peachtree Palisades and Brighton Road and down Peachtree a ways. And then I was 16 years old and I got a job in the clubhouse with Billy Wilson, the pro at Bobby Jones, and he'd tell me that all the caddies, he let us play every Monday free. And we would play from sun up to sundown. And then I polish clubs and clean the clubs and sell tickets and sell drinks and little knickknacks. Then we moved to about right after that. My dad, he lost his job. They closed the Buick place. He was service manager. We moved to Newnan, and then back then we'd caddy. Before I'd caddy, we'd come home by stopping by meal and flour and buttermilk. And that's about what we had every night for supper. Boy, times was hard then, and we'd have glued on soles on our shoes. And I went to Fulton High School, and I didn't ever graduate. I went to North Fulton one year, and then I would go back and forth to Fulton High School, where the Atlanta old stadium was, and I would walk a lot of days. I didn't have a nickel for the car fare. And I'd walk all the way to town and back. And it was pretty rough back then. Then when I went in the Navy, I lived on Antone Street, and it was right off of Howell Mill Road. And I went in December of '42.
How old were you then?
I was 17. Mother had to sign for me to get in. You had to be 18 to be a volunteer. They wouldn't let you go in.
Where had you been on Pearl Harbor Day in December of '41?
I was out at the golf course, and I got caddying. I got home, and they said that I heard it on the radio, and I was sad to hear it. And at that time, I was working for Genuine Parts Company. I worked in the shop. I did work there for a short time, and then I'd caddy on the side too. And I went in the Navy, and they shipped us to Great Lakes. I'll never forget the day we got up there in December. The place was covered in snow, below freezing, and I had on a gabardine shirt and gabardine pants. I like froze to death till we got off that L car that went out to Great Lakes in Milwaukee. And I tell you, I like froze to death. Then I went through boot camp there, and then I went into the guard around Great Lakes. You guard the gates. They put me on that for 3 months, and then they shipped me to Norfolk. And there I went aboard the Boise. But the Boise had gotten hit right after Pearl Harbor at Cape Experience. And they were by themselves. They sank three chap ships. Three destroyers and 3 cruisers by themselves. And got hit in the side, and it was killed 127 men.
Got a picture of that?
I got a picture of it here.
Hold it up. Let me see it. Hold it up here closer to where we can see.
There's another one of it.
That's good.
We had 4 airplanes aboard, observation planes, the ship, and they were seaplanes, and we had a net that we picked them up with a crane on the back of the Boise. And we started out, we went out and practiced trial runs several times, and firing and abandoning ship. And that was rough, a long jump to that sea, and then you think you're going to drown. But then we set sail for Casablanca. And we had about 300 Liberty ships, and there was 3 other cruisers with us, and about 10 destroyers on the outside to protect us. And we got all kind of calls that there was submarines, German subs was after us, and we would start zigzagging. We finally got to Casablanca. We tied up against a French ship. I forget the name of it. It was a battleship. We left there and went to Oran and docked for a day or 2, and then we went on to Algiers, North Africa. At that time, before I went in the bake shop, they appointed me to be the ship's chauffeur. He didn't have a car, he had a Jeep. And when we hit Algiers, we had to get the Jeep off, and the captain wanted to go up in the Casbah. So I drove them up there, and we had 2 Marines with their rifles and guns with us, and then we had the chaplain with us. That was rough. We had men that was out of bounds for our ship. We lost about 6 sailors went up there and got killed. Never could find them, never came back. And I'll never forget that one night the Germans had sank a ship, and we had sank some, and they picked up Germans and Americans, dead ones, and I was on the unloading crew. I had to go down and unload them off the ship onto the dock. That was horrible. Then we made a few practice runs, and then we set sail for Sicily, to invade Sicily. We hit Palermo, and then we bombarded there. I forget how many shells, but I loaded the projectiles. They weighed 150 pounds apiece, and then we put the powder keg behind them. And many a times we'd have a powder keg that didn't go off, and we'd have to throw it down on the deck and send the man down, throw it overboard. And that was really scary there. And we stayed at GQ, and I had a bar there I'd sleep on up in the turret. I don't know how I lay on it, but I did. And we had we had three guns that we loaded. And then we had a plot down in the bottom of the ship. And we had the new radar that no other ship had. And they put it on Philadelphia, and we could shoot all 15, 5 turrets at the same time, all 15 guns at once. And we had 8 5-inch guns, 4 on each side, and we could shoot them at the same side. And we could shoot one side with the other turrets at one time.
What was the noise like?
Oh, inside the turret it wasn't too bad, but outside it was pretty loud. And I've been outside when they were practicing, but down on they'd shoot them off on the other end, and I'd be at the other end of the ship. Then they put me in the, right after that, they put me in the mess hall as a mess boy. And then one of them asked me if I wanted to be a baker, and I said, yeah. So I went to the bake shop then, and there were 11 bakers, and every 11th day we had to cook for the whole crew. One of us would cook for the 11, and every other day we'd go on, we'd be on duty. Then the last, when we hit port, we carried a Liberty card, the bakers did. We were really lucky. And we carried a Liberty card, and when we were in port, we only worked 1 day out of 6, had duty. Then you could stay on Liberty the rest of the time. Of course, the rest of the crew couldn't, they just had every other day. We went on to Salerno and Naples, and our sister ship, Savannah, got hit right in front of us. The German V-bomb, first one I think that ever shot. So they said, went hit our sister ship, and we had to follow it. They towed it to Malta, and we got its ship stores, and we carried them aboard our ship. We had plenty of food then, and they'd shipped all the Savannah crew back to the States. Then we set sail and came back, went back to, I believe it was Norfolk again, and we'd get Liberty. Oh, we got Liberty in Palermo, and I went ashore there one time, and it was really torn all to pieces. And they say it's beautiful now, though, and I know it was a beautiful country. Then we set sail for the Panama Canal. We went through the Panama Canal, and we docked there, went and docked out in the lake there for about a day or two, and then we went on to New Guinea. And we started invading men at New Guinea, and we went from New Guinea to Hollandia, all the way up to till we got to Leyte, and then we really had a crowd going to Leyte. At one time, though, we were after Leyte, I was aboard ship, didn't hit ground for a year, but we'd have these parties out places. We went to the invasion of Leyte. A lot of ships got sunk there. Mike Offa was aboard the Helena, and then when we came back the next time, we went to Mindanao, I believe it was, that he came aboard. He came aboard our ship, and him and General Kruger and several other lieutenants and men with him. But General Kruger, he's a real fine guy. He'd come back and eat with us nearly every night. Then we gave out food there. At the time I didn't get off for a year. And all we had was rice and bread. And all the flour had weevils in it. And we had big sifters, and we would sift it, and they'd still be in the bread. And you go down to the mess hall, and they'd be holding up the light, picking the weevils out of it. They were so hungry they'd eat the rice and bread. Then we finally went to the Admiralty Islands, went and dry docked there. My bottom got so bad we had to scrape it. And while we was there, my brother was on a destroyer, and they pulled in there. And his signal over there, and our signal. And the captain let us visit each other. He visited me for one day, and I visited him a whole day. And then after that, we went on back. MacArthur. That's after that. MacArthur came aboard, and my brother was with me in the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the biggest sea battle of the history of the world. And they gave us credit for helping sink 3 ships, one battleship and some others. And I think we fired about 2,000 rounds more of the 6-inch guns. We had 6-inch guns. And then we crossed the equator 10 times. But back in peacetime, they used to have a initiation, you know, the target and everything else. But in wartime, they didn't. But we were lucky we didn't get that. And then we sailed on back. We went back to New Guinea, and then they sent us back to Borneo. And we went to Borneo 2 or 3 times and bombarded before they took Borneo back from the Japs. But we carried MacArthur to Bataan too one time. The second time he came aboard, and they landed paratroopers on Corregidor. And we had to pick up a bunch of them and miss the Corregidor, and the Japs had 3-inch guns, and they were shooting us. And they must have really been sorry, because they was bouncing off the side of our ship. And then we took MacArthur back to, I guess it was New Guinea. And then we went back, and we did go in Manila Harbor. And I've never seen as many sunken ships in all my life. The back end, front ends of them were sticking up. And we got Liberty there, but I didn't go ashore. But a lot of them did, and we had about 11 men went blind. They got some of that wood alcohol liquor and drank it. And boy, they'd come back crying. I said, boy, I'm glad I don't drink. But they came aboard, and then we set sail, went back to New York, and we were there in Navy Day in New York, and a lot of the people, they let people come aboard, and this friend of mine, Ed Bayer, I used to go home and spend the weekends with him when I had Liberty, and he had Liberty, and his family came aboard. And a lot of the families that lived in New York got to come aboard the ship. But there were a lot of ships there then. I don't remember how many, but all kinds, and it was in the Hudson Bay. And then they shipped us back to Philadelphia. And most of my friends got out, but I was a baker, and they froze our rates. I had enough points to get out, but they froze me. And we started going to that kept the skeleton crew. And I had to bake for them, and we'd go to Le Havre, France, and we'd load up about 1,200 soldiers and haul them back. And I had to bake for all them. That was a lot of baking. Well, we had 3 bakers baking for all them. We didn't have a full crew because they'd shipped some somewhere else. Then they sent us to Plymouth, England. The next time, we got in that North Sea and we liked to capsize. I was baking fruit cake. I'd open the oven and they'd jump out on me, go on the floor, and I'd have to rebake. I'll never forget that, man. So you couldn't sleep. My bunk was out at the front of the ship, and I hung me up a hammock in the bake shop from one corner to the other, and I slept good out there. But we lost, I don't know how many men they were told, but in that North Sea, not to go open the hatches and go out on deck, and they'd get seasick and open them anyway, and you'd never see them again. We'd be sitting up on top of a wave like this, and the screws out, and it'd shake your teeth. And then you go down a big valley, and you look up, and it looked like you was looking up at a big mountain. That was really rough going. And I did that till the war ended in August, and Mike Arthur had sent us back to the Philippines, from the Philippines to San Pedro Bay. I kind of got ahead of myself, but he sent us back to San Pedro, California, and I was home on a 20-day leave when the war ended. And I was downtown Atlanta. You couldn't move in Peachtree, you couldn't move in the street. It was solid with people shouting and hollering.
On VJ Day,
Yeah.
I was down there with you.
Was you?
My mom, I was 5 years old, and I remember distinctly learning the Japs had surrendered. I was tongue-tied, and I said, the Japs had surrendered, and she put me in the car and took me down to where Harris and Peachtree are together, Peachtree Center now, on with a fork in the road, Peachtree and West Peachtree. And it was, you
couldn't move.
You couldn't move, and we still had the electric train cars, trolleys down there. Streetcars down there. Then they couldn't move either. They were just people hanging all over the place.
They were really down there. But I got a 20-day leave, and I got on the airplane to fly home, and I got far as Phoenix, Arizona, and they kicked me off. Some officer did. You know, they had priority. And then I waited. Finally, they said they had one going to New Orleans, and then I could catch one from New Orleans to Atlanta. So I went and told them, okay, I got on and went to New Orleans, and I sit there about 8 hours. Finally, they said they had one going to Columbus, Georgia, a little plane. I got on it, went to Columbus, and then I got on another one from Columbus to Atlanta. So it took me about 18 hours to get home, and which it should have taken a lot less time. But going back, I caught one of those 2-engine planes back. I didn't get kicked off the time. I got back, and I forget now, 6, 8 hours, something like that. Wasn't long, but it was a lot quicker going back to San Pedro, California. And another thing, when we were there in San Pedro, this Ed Bay and I were on Liberty. We went into Los Angeles, and they were doing a radio show, and it was Blind Date with Movie Stars. And they called me, and I got on it. He wouldn't do it. And they had a petition here, and you sit on one side, and the Marie Wilson was the one that used to be on My Friend Irma.
Yeah, that's right.
And she picked the soldier, and she got a raw deal.
She could have had you.
She could have had me. But Arlene Francis was she was an announcer on it. Do you remember?
Yeah.
You remember that show?
Yeah.
That was something, I tell you.
Sonny, were you scared in battle and the Leyte Gulf and places like that?
Yeah, at first I was, but really not after that. I got my old Bible. I've had it since 1935. I guess I had it with me. I had my roller skates with me. I used to go to the roller drome out in Pascagoula off on Penn Avenue.
Yeah.
Used to go every night. I skated in all kind of skating rinks. We got a 2 weeks leave out in Pacific at Sydney, and we'd go to Sydney, Australia. And I went skating a lot there, but the skating, they didn't have near as big a rink, and it was a concrete floor instead of the wood floor like, Penn Avenue, like they have now. It was, but it was good to have them though. And
You carried your roller skates all over the Pacific?
All over.
Did you take any golf clubs with you?
No. I did play one time in L.A., just one time.
You were a scratch handicap golfer.
Yeah, close to it. And when I was working for Billy Wilson, I got in a 2-club tournament. And it was an old golf course out there by the old stockade. What was the name of that? I don't remember. I got in a 2-club golf tournament. I played with a 5-iron and a brassie. And I got beat in the first round, then I got in the consolation flight. And I won the consolation. And old George Berry used to be manager of Atlanta Airport. He's the one I beat to win that flight. And he really hollered, said, he's supposed to be in the championship. He wasn't supposed to be playing. He really raised Cain. I'll never forget that. But you know what I won? A pair of Boney Allen golf shoes. And where they're at, I do not know. But when I got out of the Navy, I bought a pair of Tom McCann shoes, and I had old Mac over there on Highway Road to put me some cleats in them, and I still got them to this day. They're really comfortable.
How would you light a matchstick with a golf club?
I just stick it down the ground and hit that white part. You can't find any with a white part now. I looked and looked. They all got just the red head on them, but they haven't got that white. You hit that white part, but you got to have a perfect swing. I could do it with iron or wood.
You ever set the woods on fire?
No.
Sonny, you met Dot. When did you meet Dot?
I met her. I got out of the Navy then. I finally we quit shipping, hauling troops, and they let me out in February of '46. I got out in Bainbridge, Maryland, and got good paid traveling time going home. That was a long ways instead of going to Atlanta Naval Air Station. And my daddy had, he was running a garage there by himself. I worked on part-time there at his house on Moore's Mill, there close to where you live. Right there at School Drive, it was right on the corner. And we went and bought an old 37 Plymouth. And my brother Harvey, he knew Dot and them down at the store. We were coming home from Buckhead one day, and she was going to North Fulton High School. And she was walking, and we drove by her, turned around, went back. I asked her if she wanted to ride. She said no. And then Harvey says, "You know me, don't you?" "Yeah." So she rode home with me. Then I started going down to the store a lot, playing the pinball machine.
Hold up a picture of you and Dot. You got it in there. I saw a minute ago. This is Sonny's wife, and Sonny and that's Dot Barfield, and her parents own Barfield's store down here at the corner of West Paces Ferry Road and Howell Mill and Northside Drive, where the, what's down there now in the building?
The station, they bricked around it, and it's a South Trust Bank. And the store was in behind it. I ran the store, and it, after we built it separate, and it was, it's now the Animal House Veterinary Hospital. And it's still there, the same building. My uncle used to have a potter there when I was a little kid. And when we dug the foundations for the store, we dug up old pieces of pottery. And now we used to have oodles of pottery. My grandfather was a potter, and he used to make 4 rows whiskey jugs. They call it Jugtown. And he lived, then later on he lived up on Moore's Mill at that log cabin that was on Moore's Mill. And he had a kiln right beside it. And Ivan Rollator owned the log cabin and the kiln and everything. And my grandfather just worked there for him. And it had, the log cabin had clay floors, and the kitchen, you'd have to step down into the kitchen. I'll never forget that.
Is that where the brick rock
Yeah, that's
chimney
part
still
of it,
there?
Still there. The
Still there?
For the kiln.
Right near the corner of Moore's Mill and Northside Drive,
Northside.
across from Moorgate, where
Right.
Ivanhoe Drive comes off and
Ivanhoe's there.
across from Millwalk.
Right. His sons, Ike and Pete, built that subdivision in there. Ike's a lawyer, I mean a dentist, and Pete's a lawyer. But I don't know whether, I haven't seen him lately. Now, they had a Moore's Mill reunion a good while back at the Grill Strap's house, and Pete was there, but I don't think Ike wasn't there. And Pete was in bad shape then. But there at on Moore's Mill and Howell Mill, it used to be, my grandmother, Daddy's mother, was a Cox before she married. They used to call that Cox's Crossroad. And they owned all that property, man. And then on down by where 75 is, my daddy's sister married Will Presley. And he had a dairy right there on the corner of Moore's Mill and 75, where 75 is now. And they just recently tore down his house. And the Jewish, I think, club bought behind in there.
Yeah.
And
For the
he owned all that property all the way up to Northside Drive, to where the Roller's on.
Yeah.
In fact, that where Mother and Daddy lived when I got out of the Navy, that they bought that from me.
Were the Raries any kin to you?
The rarest, my grandmother, father remarried, had a stepsister, and she married Jim Rary, where the Rary store there was on the corner. And the
Howell Mill and Moore's Mill.
Howell Mill and Moore's Mill.
Right with the
And they wound up with all the property somewhere in there. I don't know how. But Daddy's mother didn't wind up with anything. And they had a store there for a long time. And the Rares, Jim Rary and Aunt Stella, they had about 12 kids, I think. And Carl Rary was used to be your receptionist. Joyce. Carl was her daddy.
Yeah.
So they were really half cousins, I guess you'd call them. And we would be second half cousins, Joyce.
Now you've had some health problems in your life.
Oh yeah. And none of my other brothers have ever had any except my youngest brother had prostate cancer recently. And he's a health nut, always going to these health stores and taking all kind of health stuff. But he took the seed, those seeds,
No.
and he's cured it. But his wife got cancer, and I think Dr. Henderson, did you know him?
Mm-hmm.
He was her doctor, and they operated on her out at St. Joseph. And she died recently. He's remarried and lives up in Dawsonville. In fact, I went up to see him Saturday. He got a beautiful place up there. He lived in Smyrna, sold it. But I started off having kidney trouble. I had it when I was in the Navy. We was in San Pedro. I went to the Naval Hospital there in Long Beach, California. Stayed in there about 2 weeks. It's on my record. But you know, they would never give me anything. And loading them projectiles, I know is what killed it, because I hit them with hit my kidney when I load them. They said that Dr. Coleman operated about 4 times on that kidney. And then
Reese Coleman?
Reese Coleman. And then I started to go into, well, you sent me to Dr. Holloman.
Henry Holloman. And
I went to him for a good while, and then he said, might as well take it out. And I think it was about 5 times they operated on it before they took it out, and then they took it out. That was in '78. Mm-hmm. But before that, I had, I kept having hurting and everything. And this is before I knew you. They sent me up to Crawford Long. And they thought I was having heart attacks. And Dr. Joines, did you ever know him? Mm-hmm. Joines he came in there one morning, and I was, getting wringing wet with sweat and everything. And he did the 5-hour blood test for diabetic, mm-hmm. and found out I was diabetic then. And I don't think I went on any medicine until I started going to you. But they did. I'd gone to a doctor in Smyrna, and he said I had tonsillitis too. And Dr. Wilson, Frank Wilson, came in there, and they X-rayed and said I had a tumor on my thyroid. So Dr. Wilson took the thyroid out. And then the next operation I had was, I guess was when I was in a bad car wreck on Christmas Eve of 1987. And they rushed me to hit a Ford Bronco head on. And he said he sneezed, didn't see me. He turned right in front of me at 285 in Patience Fair. And they rushed me up to Kennestone, and this Dr. Henry up there found it. He X-rayed me. He said, went and told my wife, said, I don't think we'll get him to St. Joseph before his aorta will bust. And I was covered in blood in my face, and it messed up my knee and my stomach. And so they were going helicopter, fly me over to St. Joseph, and the storm came up. So they had to drive me over there, and I made it, and this Dr. Ken Thomas happened to be on. I guess I was lucky to get him on Christmas Eve. And he operated for 12 hours. Him and Dr. Davison on my stomach took out part of the intestines. They cut me like I had a heart attack in front. They did the open heart from the back. And then well, you're the ones that sent me to Dr. Holloman. You remember that? Mm-hmm. To get that kidney taken out. But after that, I had gallbladder. I'd go to that X-ray emergency room. Never did find nothing. Finally, I turned yellow in the laundromat up there one night, and I called you the next morning and you said, get on up here. You put me right in the hospital. Dr. Wilson operated on took out my gallbladder. But he had to cut in two places because I had a gallstone way down here in my gallbladder. Cut in two different places. And then that was, I thought, the worst operation I'd had. Man, I really got sick with that thing. And this doctor came in there. He was what do they call him? Internist? Yeah. And his name was Dr. Luke. You remember him?
I don't remember him.
Well, he came in there one day and he pulled that thing out. He said, I'm going to take that drain out. And he pulled it. It was like pulling a lawnmower. He jerked it out, and they just gave me a shot, pain shot. I went to sleep, and when I woke up, there's people all around that, and everything was covered in blood. So I don't remember whether they gave me a blood transfusion or not, but that gallbladder hurt worse than anything. Now, back in '53, I had a hemorrhoid operation. That was rough. Oh, that first one.
Did you
I jumped in the hot tub of water.
You have any trouble with your bladder too?
Yeah. My bladder, you sent me to Dr. Allen. Kept having a kidney infection. And he found that I had cancer of the kidney. The bladder. Cancer of the bladder, and he come up there and we talked, and he said I'll have to take the bladder out. And he said there's two little mushrooms against your stomach. He said if I cut them, I'm liable to cut in your stomach, then it'll spread. But anyway, he told me and my wife and my kids to go up there one day. We met with him. And I said, well, what would you do, Dr. Allen? He said, I think I'd try to cut them out. I said, okay, and cut them out. And I took that chemo, he'd take one out, he took one out, and then I'd take that systemic chemo. And then about 6 months later, maybe 3 months, I believe, he cut the other one out, and then I took 6 more treatments of that, systemic. And ever since then, it's been benign. He runs, for the longest, he run a cystoscope every 6 months. Now he's doing it in his office, maybe once a year.
What happened to you 2 months ago?
Oh, well, I forgot when I was on a reunion. I had a pacemaker. They said I needed a pacemaker. So when I got back, you sent me to Dr. Smith. I believe it was Bobby Smith. Mm-hmm. He put in a pacemaker, and my pacemaker quit several months back. And they did an echocardiogram of it, my heart, and Dr. Cook, my wife, you sent her to Dr. Cook. And he looked at him. I don't know why he looked at him. I don't know where he talked to you or what. But anyway, he said I had 2 blocks. So he put they did a catheterization and said I had 2 blocks. And he didn't put them in then, the stents. He could have. But anyway, about 2 or 3 weeks later, went back and put 2 stents in at Piedmont. And I was hurting when I got through. But the next morning, I never had such hurt in all my life. And they gave me a nitroglycerin tablet. and it didn't stop. They gave me another one that didn't stop. And they gave me another one that didn't stop. So I think, I don't know where they called you, it's like some Dr. Cook, I guess. He said, give him some morphine. So they gave me a shot of morphine that didn't stop. So they gave him one more shot of morphine that went away and hadn't come back anymore. And I don't know, I'm sure it was a heart attack, it wouldn't hurt like that. But they didn't X-ray it or anything.
How old are you now, Sonny?
I was 80 last May the 6th.
So you were born during the Depression, grew up having to forage around the line of caddying for everybody to earn enough to eat.
Right.
Went to World War II, fought on the Boise in both the Mediterranean and the Pacific. Cooked for General MacArthur. Had him on board ship when they went into Leyte.
No, not Leyte, but Luzon and Mindanao. And then we went to Leyte Gulf Battle.
Then you came back to Atlanta and married Dot Barfield.
Yeah.
Lived in north side Atlanta all your life.
We lived back of the store for about 4 years while I was building that house.
And had all kind of health problems. And somehow you learned not to give up when you were a little boy.
Right.
You learned not to give up in World War II when they had you on the ship for a year.
Right. And food got low. I'll never forget that. They were sitting down in the mess hall, looking up, picking weevils out of the little slices of bread. Now the bread locker was down there, and it was right above the engine room, and it was 120 degrees in that bread locker. And every 11th day, we had to run the bread locker. One of the bakers did. And I was a baker 3rd class. I should have been a baker 1st class, but at least with 11 aboard there were so many. It was hard to get a higher rate. But they were, some ahead of me. But I got pictures of the bake shop here. And
let's see those.
That's me on the far back right.
This is Sonny.
Yeah, on the far back right.
When he was a young man.
A young man.
This is Sonny.
But I'm not going to try to run the 4th of July race this year.
Working in the bakery on the Boise. He's in the background loading up the oven there, not in the foreground shoveling. Sonny, what kind of lessons did you learn, do you think, in the Depression and World War II that you'd like future generations of young people to know from your experiences?
Well, I would say get a good education first, which I did not. I went to Georgia State for 2 years on the GI Bill and at night. And I worked for my father-in-law, Mr. Barfield, and he paid me $45 a week. And I made $90 a month from the GI Bill. But that was a good bit of money back then. But after we sold the store in 1972, I'd gone partially in the coin laundry business. And I eventually had coin laundries in apartments. And I had about 52 locations. And then I had 2 stores. I had one in Smyrna crossing the South Trust Bank. Then I had one on Windy Hill. It's now, it's called Windy Hill now. It was Cherokee back then. And it was right across the street from the Miss Winters. And it was Sundot Coin Laundry. I'm gonna get a picture of it, I don't think. No. Picture of my house. I put every board in that fence up and dug every hole. 65 posts. And it took a while. But I would open up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Back then, you know, Northside Parkway was the only road going from Florida up north. And there's Sundock Coin Laundry in front of it, across from Miss Winters.
Well, Sonny, this has been a real treat for me because you have been one of my heroes since I was a little boy coming up to shop at Barfield's store, having grown up on Howe Mill and West Wesley Road. And then when I got to see you as a patient 20 plus years ago, that was a reunion of sorts for me. You've been keeping me appraised of the history of Northwest Atlanta ever since then, and I've seen some of the lessons you learned in having guts and fortitude and perseverance and never saying quit keep you alive these last 20 or 25 years that I've been taking care of you.
You can't let the work come to you. You got to go after it.
And again,
And that's the way I got all my locations in apartments. I'd see them building, I'd go up till I found the owner that was building and contact them. I'd get out and drive in the afternoon after I had my house built. I was still working at night. I'd get off at noon and go. I'd work the coin laundries. So I did that part-time before we sold out, which was a lot of work. And of course, Dot helped me. She knew all the key numbers. She would rob. Miss Barfield went with me too some after he sold out. But if she was sick or something, couldn't go, I'd go 3 times a week checking her, and I'd get the money out, and then take me forever. I wouldn't finish. She knew every key number to every washer, and knew every one was different. I had a different set of keys for each location.
once again, I thank you on behalf of my generation and future generations for what you did to make this country a great place to live.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking care of me too all these years, because I'm walking today on account of you.